thought process goes like this, though, right? So does the person meet the minimum requirements of the Federal Skilled Worker Program, Federal Skilled Trades, CEC? If the answer is yes to that, well, does the person meet the cutoff score? If the answer to that is yes, then we are happy because we can put the person through express entry. Then, though, we have the question. So which of the three client types is this person? All right, well, we have three, we kind of categorize people really into three categories when we are looking at express entry. So we have somebody who doesn't meet the FSW requirements. Mostly it's FSW because FST is pretty rare. CEC, if your business is similar to ours, you're not really targeting people in Canada already. You have other people who are in that second category where they meet the requirements of FSW or CEC, FST, but they're under the cutoff score. Finally, you have people who meet the requirements and they exceed the cutoff score. So it's interesting, and I hope you're thinking of your clients in the economic programs kind of in a similar style here, where you do have people who qualify, but I think a lot of you have people who just don't have the CRS points. So what can we do? Well, we have other options to look at, of course, right? All right, so somebody who doesn't meet those requirements of the program, you know, we're going to always analyze their information. We'll take a look at PMPs, SUV. I don't know. That's not really an easy one, but maybe the person wants to come as a student. That's something that we talk about quite a bit. All right, and of course, you're really analyzing their education, their work experience, their language scores, all this type of stuff, because we really, really, really want to see if the person can qualify. Okay, so why do we want to explore other immigration options? What do you think? Okay, I'll give you a little hint here. So I want to know what you think are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of exploring other immigration options for people, non-express entry related. Okay, so we've got some good comments here. Sometimes it's impossible for people to get a higher score. Yeah, age is something really, really, really big. You know, you can, not only age, people look at the age issue and they say, yeah, it's really tough because clients lose points every year and there's really nothing you can do. You have a similar issue with experience where experience maxes out as well, where if a person has 10 years experience versus 3 years experience, it winds up being the same. So it certainly is an issue, and it's very difficult because you get some great people who just are a little tiny bit older, and that means that they don't qualify. I find it sort of ironic because the previous version of the Federal Skilled Worker Program, they gave points for age, of course, but then these applications would take 8 years or 6 years, as everyone was talking about here. And with that, I mean, you're losing. So if you had somebody who qualified at 40 years old, I mean, that person's 46 years old by the time they get into the Canadian workforce. So I find it's kind of an interesting way to look at it as well. Some of the other ones aren't as quick. That's absolutely correct. You might have a client who says, okay, I want to be in Canada now, so get ready and find a quick solution for me or something like that, right? And, you know, the study option is always good for that. But some of the other options, maybe a provincial option, or if you're looking at maybe Quebec, or you're looking at something else, it's just not as quick. Okay, another comment. In the end, you want to help with the program best suited for the person. Yeah, and sometimes you'll have somebody who says, no, I absolutely have to go to Toronto. It has to be Toronto, and that's it. But maybe they only qualify for like a New Brunswick program or something. So, it's a conversation you have to have, and you have to explain to them that, of course, they need to intend to reside in New Brunswick, of course. But yeah, it's you need a successful application. I mean, you have to get results for your clients. If you can't get results for them, then you just don't accept them as clients. Just keep it simple. Okay, so advantages and disadvantages of exploring other immigration options. Express entry is the best. We love it. It's great. It's quick. It's concise. And if we don't use express entry, I mean, we're just not in express entry, so we can't really avail ourselves to those advantages. There are so many PMPs. Do you find PMPs easy to navigate or difficult? Difficult usually. Yes, I agree. It's nice to have the option of a PMP. Okay, there's a comment that says BC PMP is the easiest one to navigate. It's nice to have the option of a PMP, but part of the difficulty is that I find they open and close really quickly. It's very difficult to maintain the plan that you have for the client when you're looking at a provincial nominee program that's closed and you're hoping it opens soon, but you don't really know. Or some of them open, and it was one recently, I don't remember which one though, it was like 30 seconds or something like that, and it filled up with whatever the amount of applications it was. I think it was a Saskatchewan program. So it's really difficult to do that. You can't really kind of sit next to your computer and wait for a program to open and then submit it really, really quickly. And of course, they change as well. So they have, sometimes there's on-demand jobs and that type of thing, and they change quite frequently. So anyways, it is pretty difficult to navigate those programs. And of course, there are just so many of them. This is difficult for new RCICs. For more experienced RCICs, as you keep moving through your career, well, you might work with, someone mentioned BC PNP. Yeah, maybe you'll find a BC PNP that fits the profile of your clients really well. Great. The first one's going to be tough, and then it gets easier and easier, of course, as you move on. But then it's going to be a great tool to add to your tool belt when you're thinking of options for your clients. For newer RCICs, you want to master the programs that target as many consultants as possible, as many immigrants as possible. So, of course, you're looking at express entry as number one. This is the big one here. And even if a person qualifies in another area, let's say the person is a perfect candidate for the Quebec Skilled Worker Program. All right, how many of you are Quebec consultants as well? How many of you are MEDSI accredited? Probably, maybe there's one or two of you, but even with that, right? So if the client qualifies for one of those Quebec programs, you're not authorized to do that type of work anyways. But what if they qualify for the Newfoundland program, a Newfoundland PNP? If you don't know how to do one of those applications, I personally don't, you can't accept that client, right? Or you can accept that client, but you'll work with someone who knows how to do that type of work. So pretty tough. I know when people first become RCICs, I used to get a lot of calls at work from new consultants, and they would tell me a story, and they'd say, okay, I've got somebody who, somebody who came in, and they tell you this really long story about and this guy's so he's inadmissible. He's been living here illegally for 8 years, and he has a girlfriend though. His girlfriend is in some situation or something like that. Something really, really, really complex and complicated. And they want to do this as their first client. And, the answer is try your best to refer it to maybe a lawyer or someone for those really, really, really complex ones. For the easier ones, you want your first clients to be kind of those easier programs, right? Like express entry or a student or something like that. Then you can diversify as much as you want. Okay, and of course, another disadvantage that I just thought of now, I didn't put it in the presentation, has to do with the intent of your client. Um, the intent of the client is really so incredibly important. When you're working as an RCIC, it's a bit different because from preparing for the ICCRC exam, for example, because the intent of your client can change, right? So if you have a client who doesn't qualify for any programs, so he wants to move to Toronto, but he doesn't qualify for any programs that allow him to live in Toronto, but he qualifies for maybe an Alberta program. What can you do then? So what can you do with a client who wants to go to Toronto but doesn't qualify for any programs, immigration programs that allow him to go to Toronto? He only qualifies for an Alberta program, let's say. A bit of a gray area. We're really clear with clients with this. It's kind of interesting because a person who's a PR is a PR, right? You have freedom of movement. You can do kind of whatever you want. But we make it very, very, very clear. Yeah, just as David said here, we make it 100% clear that, yeah, this person is going to have to really intend to live in Alberta. What does that mean? How do you prove someone's intent to live in Alberta? I always tell them that even though in real life, I think, it's not really enforced. I would say, I don't know if it's ever enforced really, or it's not enforced that often, of course. But I always tell them that when they go for their citizenship, that the officers are going to look at everything, of course. And if the person lied on his application and said he's going to live in Alberta, but then didn't live in Alberta, well, they're going to take a look a little bit closer. So how do you get your client to prove that he has that genuine intention or had that genuine intention to live in Alberta? Because sometimes your client will come to you for citizenship, maybe 3 years later, maybe even 4 years later for citizenship. And, you tell them, okay, when you come back in 3 years, these are the documents that I want to see. Yeah, living arrangements. Anything else? Okay, there's a great comment here. Intent is different than reality. Intention is proven by landing and trying to start a life in that province. 100% correct. But remember, it is, of course, the proof, proof, proof. So if they have solid proof they couldn't find a job and documented it, I agree completely. And then they found a job outside, they could move. Of course. Perfect. Yeah, that's a perfect answer. And then some of those documents, of course, would include, you'd keep the emails from kind of failed job interviews and that type of thing. Did your kids register in school out there? Did you get a job out there? Did you join a gym or whatever? Did you join a team? Did you go to church or something like that out there? Did you join any organizations? Or, of course, did you land and move away 2 weeks later? So those are the documents that prove a person really intended to live in that province. And it is a conversation, a very serious conversation you have with your clients. Because for me, hey, I don't want to get in trouble from the government. I don't want them to think that I'm coaching people to pretend they're going to live in Alberta. And for the client as well, I don't want my client to think that his first day in Canada, he can scam, he can lie to the government, right? So, you always tell people you're starting a new life, do it ethically. If you think you're not going to live in this province, let's explore something else. Let's explore a study option. Let's explore something else. And they, of course, really, I think they really appreciate it as well. So what are the advantages, of course, in exploring other options? Well, we can still help our clients. And that's the biggest thing. They're coming to you for help. So even though you sometimes turn away clients, or I'd say pretty often you turn away clients, because they just don't qualify for anything. Well, you can still help people in other ways, right? That study transition is one of those great ways that you can help people. So, exploring other options is one of them. The other one is what we've been talking about quite a bit, and that is, of course, dual intent. So coming to Canada, studying, and transitioning to PR status in the future. So does anybody have clients where this is a plan for you already, where you have clients who you're kind of doing this for already? Yeah, most people do. You know, really, it's a lot of the RCICs I work with and talk to, even RCICs who have been in the business for so long, for 30 years even, they say that this is really the way to immigrate these days. And I think we know why, right? So why do you think this is it's my personal opinion as well, that this is absolutely the best way to immigrate, not just in terms of the immigration options that are presented here, but just in terms of integration, it's amazing. But I want to hear your opinion again. So why do you think this is the best way, or I shouldn't say it. A lot of people say this is the best way to immigrate. Why do you think that is? Yeah, absolutely. Students are 100% the best immigrants. The integration rate is so incredible. You know, one of the issues, of course, with ECAs is that the doctors driving taxis thing that we talked about before, right? Where some people, hey, their degree wouldn't transfer over. You'll never, ever, ever have that issue if the person graduated from maybe Bow Valley College or a university or something like that in Canada, right? Yeah, and they get that solid foundation. So we have clients who we helped years ago when we started, and you know we always keep track of people, and they pop in once in a while and that kind of thing. And I love it when you have somebody who was maybe 20, 24, or even 34 or 44, whatever, when they come study and then transition, because it's really step by step immigration. Because they're going to a Canadian school, they're going to have all their friends from everywhere. Well, I would say Canadian friends, but really, even when I went to school, I mean, all my class was from all different places and all that. And it's a great introduction to Canada. They get that work permit. So maybe they'll start off with a job like working at a cafe or something like that. It's perfectly fine. And then they transition to maybe jobs more related to their studies. And that's perfectly fine. So by the time they graduate, you've got somebody with obvious language skills because they studied in English or French. You've got somebody with a ton of Canadian work experience, even though it might not count in some immigration areas, of course. And of course, they've got that Canadian degree. So it is just perfect, perfect, perfect. One of those future elements that the government talks about all the time is, of course, welcoming more and more and more international students. Canada has such a great reputation for international studies as well. And part of the reason is simply because of the transition from being a student to immigration. So it's really win-win. And we're talking about the post-grad work permit. Oh yeah, the post-grad work permit is a home run as well. And for a lot of you, I don't know if you work with students. We work with students as well. And it's kind of the same idea that we talked about right at the beginning of the day. A lot of the students, they are not really choosing Canada. They have different options that they're looking at. And they're kind of looking at Canada. And you know, one of those big selling points for people to come study in Canada versus Australia most of the time is simply it's those immigration options. And I've spoken with a lot of people who chose Canada because of the parent-grandparent sponsorship as well. So it's interesting. It's something you don't really think about. But yeah, you get all these really, really, really great immigrants who are so integrated that it's just perfect. Okay, let me just read through some of the comments here. Yeah, they get a solid foundation to become successful in Canada. And it's cheaper. That's a great comment. Yeah, you know, it's cheaper to have those immigrants instead of mid-career immigrants. So they would pay taxes more over the long term. That's correct. Yeah, and then the post-grad work permit's amazing as well. Yeah, there's, I like this one as well. So we would ideally we would like to see all of our clients become established and successful here, some even if such concern may go on our go beyond our ethical responsibilities. I don't really think so. I don't think it's unethical to want your clients to be successful in their lives, right? But it is certainly rewarding when you have a client who comes to visit you after a couple years, or you run into somebody, or they want to do some other type of business with you or something, and they're really these successful people. It's really, really, really great. Are we offering a study permit CPD that talks about tricks to avoid while applying? Yeah, we have. We did a huge CPD event a few months ago on study permits. I think it was 11 hours long with Andrew, and it was yeah, really, really, really thorough and covered really everything. That's why we're not talking about study permits that much today, even though I've spoken about how important it is to make sure that you're really working well with students and